sometimes it's not black and white. I think this is about partnership, but I think in the end of the day, and if I was to highlight one community within any organization that really has the power to make this successful, it's the manager community. It is the people who are on the ground with their teams of 6 to 10 people, or, their number of people who really can have that influence. So I would look on HR as the most critical business partners to ensuring the success of employee engagement and health and well-being and all of the things we've talked about, DE&I and collaboration. But equally, they need to be hand in hand with the people on the ground and the managers across any organization. So I think, whatever we can be doing around bringing that manager community with us, that will get that ripple impact. We want them to be the champions. We want them to be the leaders of implementing this and leverage HR as amazing business partners and consultants in helping us to get there. So I think that's how I've seen it be most successful, and it's working really well.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Richard Gregory, who's a global leader of modern workplace practice at Avanade, and Fiona Carney, who's a Chief Marketing and Operations Officer, Western Europe at Microsoft. During the podcast, Fiona and Richard discuss how Microsoft designed the employee experience platform VIVA to serve as a digital equalizer where employees feel connected, valued, and can continue to learn, grow, and be productive no matter where they're working from. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Fiona, Richard, welcome to the show. How are you both?
We're good, thanks, Chris. Nice to have you. Nice to be back.
Yeah, nice to see you again. And Fiona, thank you for joining us.
Very welcome. Great to be here. Lovely to be with you today.
Amazing. Before we jump in, I know, Richard, people already know a lot about you, but we'll go back to that because you've been on the show a few times. Fiona, could you introduce yourself, tell everyone a little bit more about yourself personally and your journey to where we are now?
Sure. So my name is Fiona Carney, and I look after our marketing and operations for Microsoft across Western Europe. Western Europe is a group of 12 markets. So we're the second largest region in the world, with over 5,000 amazing people working with us to land our business. And my journey started actually in consulting. So I started with Accenture and KPMG many years ago. And I've worked in Microsoft about 15 years in multiple different roles. And most recently, I've just come back from Asia, where I was leading the Asia marketing and operations team for the last number of years.
Wow. I feel like we need a whole other podcast just to delve into that journey for everyone as well. And Richard, give everyone a recap. You're kind of well known to our listeners, but for new listeners.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So Richard Gregory, I currently sit within Avanade. It's a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft. So we were just laughing between me and Fiona before. It's very incestuous sometimes. But I think as most people know, I've had this really strange journey of kind of being sat in the consulting world, sat in industry, sat as a CHRO, and also sat as a technologist. And I guess as we've seen the world of HR changes, we've seen the challenges come out post-COVID. It is this beautiful balance between kind of being people-centric, but also being digital in that mindset that I think is what we're seeing organizations kind of struggle with. I've always said that I think HR struggles to sometimes understand the IT side of the world, and IT struggles to understand the people-centric side of the world. And if you're going to solve this big challenge of EX, you've got to be able to join the two worlds together. So it's nice to see that all coming to fruition. Otherwise, I'd have wasted my career so far, Chris.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch that, right? And I think now more than ever, we need to be having these conversations as well, especially after the last 2 years of what we've gone through. I think a good place to start is whenever I'm speaking to our HR executives and we talk about Microsoft, we talk about VIVA coming up, there seems to be different views and perspectives. So I want to hear from your own perspective. What is Microsoft VIVA? Fiona, if you could elaborate.
Yeah, I know it's a very good question because it can be different things to different people. So look, ultimately, Microsoft VIVA is an employee experience platform. And it's really intended to try and bridge the gap between employees and managers, leaders, and people in the organization. And I think ultimately we want to really be able to foster a good, healthy company culture, but also it brings in things like being able to support employee well-being, being able to support a culture of learning where people have an opportunity to really get access to learning when they need it and be able to build their skills. So to break it down, it's a platform, but ultimately it's made up of a number of different components. And a few examples of those are things like VIVA Pulse. So VIVA Pulse is going to help you to be able to get a pulse check on how your teams are doing. So whether that's kind of confidential feedback, whether that's trying to get a sense of how people are feeling. Often in the past, companies would have done these types of pulses maybe once a year. And in the end of the day, we need to be really looking at people a lot more frequently. So VIVA Pulse helps us to do that. VIVA Goals is another one. So many companies today are using metrics of some sort. We have a concept around what we call OKRs, which are objectives and key results. And again, if you want to get everybody really aligned on what are the shared priorities of a team, a function, an organization, this will help you to do that so people can kind of keep focused on what's most important for their day-to-day business. And then a last example is around VIVA Learning. So we talked a bit about, the importance of the culture of learning, and VIVA Learning ultimately helps everybody to have access to what's the latest content, what's the latest learning they might need to be doing, what's critical, what's additional, and it really allows people to have it integrated into their day-to-day, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on, but there are a couple of the examples.
Love that. Anything you want to add there, Richard?
Yeah, I think it's that day-to-day bit that for me's got me excited as a professional that's kind of spent the last 18 years in this space. I mean, there's lots of employee engagement survey tools. There's lots of LXPs and LMSs that are out there, but no one's been able to do kind of the consolidation, the bringing it all together, the connecting all of these different tools and assets that, let's be honest, most HR functions probably have got in one form or another, so that actually they start talking to one another. And yes, okay, we've been sold this fallacy over a number of years that APIs will do that, but no one's ever brought these things together. And that's what I think Microsoft have kind of got right here, is they are trying to connect all of that data, because ultimately it is all connected in how we operate as kind of individual employees. I think the second thing, and the secret sauce here for me, is Microsoft Teams and actually that Microsoft ecosystem, because I know the likes of ServiceNow have tried to do this in the past and kind of failed. A number of kind of startups have tried to do this in the past and failed. And they've done it because it's yet another tool and technology that we're adding into that ecosystem. What is it I read the other week? The 88 applications the average employee has to deal with. No one wants an additional 89th or 90th. The fact that everybody uses Teams, the fact that everybody uses M365, the fact that it's ubiquitous makes bringing these individual experiences into the flow of work kind of seamless. And then what you're starting to see Microsoft do, which again, I think is really exciting, is starting to make employee experience seem far more than just something that HR needs to solve or that is related to just the HR lifecycle. So you start to see some of those individual functional modules that Microsoft's trying to create, whether it's Viva Sales or whatever they might bring out next, where it's actually thinking about also, what does it mean to do my job? How do I improve my experience to do my job? And therefore, personally, I'm really excited because I think Microsoft have absolutely nailed it on the head here. And as they keep bringing out more of these modules, you can start to see how that full employee lifecycle, all of those moments that matter, can be kind of brought together into a single experience, as opposed to kind of 20 different things that the HR functions kind of bodged together over a number of years.
Yeah. And, I do like that. And I guess it's people-centric, right? In the end of the day, we want to have our people in the middle. That's what every company and every organization wants. And then it's allowing easy access. So it isn't, like you say, something that's an add-on at the end of a day or something that's on a checklist, but it's there in front of you, the tools that you use every day. So I think we're learning, right? We're learning. It's relatively new, but that's been a great advantage.
Mm. I love a lot of the research that's come out of it recently. There's been a lot of myth busting that's been happening. And I think one of the things I wanted to jump into first was talking about productivity paranoia, which I feel like Microsoft almost coined that phrase at this point as well. Does hybrid work increase or decrease productivity? What are you seeing?
Well, maybe Richard, I'll I'll kick in and you can jump in on this one. Yeah, look, I mean, I think the reality is the last few years have really proved that people can be productive from anywhere. And we've seen that across multiple industries, multiple locations. But it's interesting. We had some research done lately. It's a work trend index report. And there's been a gap found. And it's coined the phrase productivity paranoia. What that means and how we've come across that is that from a data perspective, 87% of employees are saying that they're productive at work. So we all think we're being productive at work, but actually 85% of leaders say that the shift to hybrid has made it challenging to have the confidence that people are actually being productive in work. So we're feeling productive, but it's not always, that same confidence isn't always shared by our managers and leaders, even though we can show that the number of hours that have been worked, the number of meetings have increased. So I think there's a little bit of at odds with what really constitutes productivity. And I think the reality is we need leaders and managers across organizations to maybe stop worrying about if their people are working enough, but really help them focus on the work that's most important and start looking at the impact that those people are driving and how they're getting to that end goal and to that success. And I think while we've always focused on delivering tools for productivity, for collaboration, I think we need to now go beyond that and really focus on what is that success and the impact that we're expecting people to drive. So yeah, that's essentially the productivity paranoia and where it's coming from.
You see, I see that. I've seen that for a number of years. The bit I really like, and we've tried to get an understanding on it ourselves here at Avanade, is taking some of the things like VIVA Insights and actually getting some metrics behind it. Because it's amazing. You go and ask CEOs or executives within a lot of organizations, and they're going off gut feel. They've no actual fast facts. So they're going off the gut feel. What I really like is if you look at some of the VIVA Insight stuff, you can actually get some hard metrics on this to really understand. And it takes all of that conflict away from some of those exec level discussions around actually how much do your teams collaborate across different functions. Actually, you claim to be customer centric, but actually that's not the way that the organization actually operates. You think that the workforce isn't productive, but actually when you look at some of the metrics associated with productivity, it proves the exact opposite. I think there's a lot of kind of gut feel that actually is quite damaging, and actually from a trust perspective with employees kind of makes them feel not trusted. Whereas actually if leaders have got access to this, they're not having to go off that gut feel. They can actually go off the hard and fast facts and look, hey, if there is a part of the organization that is less productive, there's probably a reason behind it. Go and understand that reason and stop kind of doing leadership and management by guesswork. So I do think, again, that's a little bit of secret sauce that, again, a lot of HR functions, a lot of organizations don't realize that they've already got that power. They've already got that metric. I like Microsoft's latest phrase of do more with less, because this is already there operating within a lot of organizations. It's just that the organizations internally aren't talking about it, and HR aren't leveraging the tools that IT have got, and vice versa. So like a lot of HR professionals could probably go and get these insights from their IT function this afternoon if they had the right conversation.
And, you know, just even bringing it down to a team level, right? Day to day, if I'm a manager, I have the ability now to be able to look and see where are my team spending their time. You know, how do I need to look out for their health and well-being, right? Are people spending time all hours, day and night on certain things? Are they collaborating enough across groups? So if you're in an organization where you have a lot of those shared priorities and you should be really connecting across multiple functions, but yet the data is showing that you're not, that you're staying internally focused, and that's a great coaching conversation that you can have with your team to see how can they be looking at things differently. So I think, you know, as managers, this is amazing for us to have. Again, it's about taking the time to really think about what we want to do with that in order to help people's lives be better, the quality of their work life, the quality of their home life.
I agree. I also think it's a big shift in just the leadership mindset. and a shift culturally. It's not just technological. We've got with technology, but until we have a shift in mindset and culture, you're not going to see much change as well. Even I'll say personally, even I struggled early on during the pandemic when my team went completely remote. All of a sudden I was like, are they doing work? Who's doing what? Because I didn't have that data. I didn't have that dashboard. I didn't have that visibility. If I had that, then I would feel a lot more comfortable. And as you said this multiple times, Richard, during our conversations, that so many companies already have this data. They just don't know where it is in the organization, or they don't have the right relationships in the organization to know where it even sits as well. So I'm actually really excited about it, to get this data in the hands of those leaders. But also I do feel like they need the right support and training from the rest of the business, because it is a big shift in the way we lead as well. What about well-being? Because, one of the kind of things that came to the forefront during the last couple of years was well-being, which was amazing to see. I'd love to hear kind of what you're doing in terms of redefining what well-being means in the workplace.
Again, I think it's so important right now. And I know actually this week was Mental Health World Day.
Exactly,
and,
yeah.
So it's a very timely conversation. But I think the reality is again, people have had a tough time over the last few years, and trying to balance and juggle so much that may be going on personally as well as in work. So I think well-being in the workplace is becoming more and more important. And I think for HR leaders, it's obviously really top of mind. What we've learned again in the Work Trend Index is that 53% of employees are more likely to prioritize health and well-being over work than before the pandemic. So huge increase there. I think flexibility and well-being are really the non-negotiables that companies everywhere these days can't afford to ignore. And I think, the move beyond thinking only about productivity, but instead really thinking about how we're empowering people to be more effective, like we said, and really looking at that impact. It's about working smarter and not harder. And in getting that message across to our teams as we coach with them every week, every month is really important. How can they think about doing things differently? How can they work smarter and not necessarily extra hours? So I guess, we know employees want flexibility, and we also know that flexibility doesn't have to mean always on, always being available, sitting on your couch at 10 o'clock and being expected to reply to pings and Teams messages and emails. And, one of the things that we've really done at Microsoft is we've launched this concept of a team agreement. So it's something that every team can have a conversation on to help draw some of those boundaries. What do those boundaries need to look like so that people can have healthy well-being? What are the times of the day that they're just not going to be available because they're picking up their kids, or they're at exercise, or they've got, something on? What are the values that are important to them, especially in a very diverse organization like Microsoft and many other across the world? You got to understand people's values and their culture. Where are they coming from? What's important for them? So this team agreement is just a really nice way to get that foundation set for a team. And I think, the last thing I'd say is technology does help people with the insights that can help them to figure out the best time for collaborating, for when they need to have maybe focused work versus working with others, and also to help make sure that people are actually unplugging. We have this concept of focus time. I love it. It puts everything on do not disturb. It gives you that half hour to just really take a step back. Maybe you just need a breather. Maybe you need to do a bit of email catch up. Maybe you need to do some thinking and something strategic that's not in the day-to-day, and focus time helps you there. So I think, along with the number of other initiatives that are helping to raise awareness around well-being and particularly mental health, some of the technology can also help us.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, here at Avanade, we've been testing VIVA for a number of years now. I mean, personally, on a personal basis, it's really helped me. It's brought learning and some of those things that I would never have focused on because I've been too busy, and I'm never going to go and access that learning management system and click through that next course because I just don't think about it. So it's brought that into my day-to-day work, so I can learn and I can feel more empowered and improve my own experience, and that undoubtedly has an impact on well-being. But it's also helped me be a better manager. What are those kind of 2-3 minute tidbits that can help me understand how I'm interacting with my team and how I can make their lives better? And then at Avanade, we've kind of taken it one step further. It's similar to what Fiona was saying there, they've done at Microsoft with those team agreements. We actually came up with a global initiative. And to be fair to our CEO, Pam Maynard, like, I think this is pretty cutting edge. She said, right, okay, if we trust our people to make multi-million-dollar decisions, why are we not trusting them to work the most efficiently and effective and what's right for them? So we actually came up with the alternative work week right at the start of the pandemic. We tested it and piloted it, but it ultimately gives me the flexibility as an employee within Avanade to work whatever I need to work each week to get my work done. So if that's working 4-day week or 4.5 days one week, or maybe take a couple of hours off on a Tuesday afternoon for my school kids' sports day, we've been empowered from the top down, and that has actually now been rolled out across the world. And that flexibility has actually been embedded as a policy, as a process, as just the way of working that we operate here at Avanade. And we literally this last week, our US business has had one of the global employer surveys, and I think we're now the third most attractive business in the US to work for, certainly the #1 consulting. And that alternative work week, the empowerment, the flexibility, the focus on well-being has been named the key driver in that. And that's, I mean, Avanade's always focused on that, but we've seen such a step change. And again, it's about having that data. It's about leveraging that data to give confidence to leaders to make these decisions, and then kind of ensure that actually that's followed through, and we're not destroying the business by any of these decisions, but actually we're making the business thrive because our people are thriving. So I know a lot's been said around 4-day working week and formal government schemes. I say to a lot of organizations, just get on and do it, because that empowerment we've seen of our workforce has been transformational.
What are you hearing from the clients, Richard, on that side? Because you're in a unique position where you're seeing companies roll this out every day.
Well, look, I think there's a lot of cynicism and skepticism, and I think it comes back to, I mean, if anyone's not read in the HR community the work trend reports that Microsoft have been doing for the last 9 months, I would say they are the must read for all HR professionals. I think, let's be honest, every organization I always goes and talks to always says, oh, well, we're slightly unique, we're slightly special, that doesn't fit here. And of course, every organization, just like us as humans, is slightly different. But I do think there's a trend to organizations wanting to try something different. But it is that mindset piece that you talked about. It is that data piece that we've talked about. But again, to a certain extent, this is just a business imperative now. You look at some of the attrition data that's coming out, the whole war for talent 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, I don't know which war for talent we're in now. But I think as we move forwards, this is going to be table stakes for a lot of organizations. It's just going to be how much pain do they have to go through for that to realize. And then, of course, we've also got to remember there's a whole bunch of the workforce, 2 billion human beings globally, that don't have that opportunity. It's very luxury for us to say, oh, flexibility. If you're a frontline worker, you don't have that luxury. But again, I think some of the stuff Microsoft's trying to do to tackle that inequity in different personas, in different workforces, and how do you use kind of the shift scheduling to create some level of flexibility in frontline, again, I think is truly admirable, because it's very easy to solve it for knowledge workers. It's 10 times harder to solve it for frontline workers.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. You mentioned equity there. One of the big focus areas for all of our leaders, and I know for you, this is something you're passionate about, Fiona, is the DE&I efforts at Microsoft. Could you share some of the work that you're doing there, and obviously how you're using technology to further those efforts?
Yeah, I mean, look, diversity and inclusion is close to my heart. It's close to many people's heart, but I think how we can leverage technology to help in that is also really important. And it's both the landscape of inclusion that we are able to provide and making sure there's safe spaces for people to come in and do their best every day, but it's also how can we use the technology. I think, for us, it's had a huge impact in how we're thinking about things like accessibility and inclusion. So if I think even day to day, being able to leverage captions when we're reading things, we often have a lot of people who English is not their first language. And so just even being able to communicate more clearly is quite powerful. basic things that we never had in the past, like recording meetings, in a global world. That can allow you to say to some teams, hey, don't worry about being on that 11 p.m. call. We'll record it and you can listen to it in the morning. And also, you need that fabric of trust then for them to say, okay, I'm not going to have a fear of missing out. I'm going to watch the recording later and get what I need out of it. I think translation into different languages, even things like photos, being able to actually get to know people better through their photos and their profile pictures. All of this is helping us to create a more inclusive environment. I often really think a lot about people who may have different styles. So some people are a lot more extroverted than others, as we all know. And particularly when I was in Asia, there's a lot of people whose style tends to be more introverted. So making sure that there's space for everybody to have a voice, making sure that the chat function in Teams and in our messaging solutions is used actively and people are, watching it as we go through the meeting. I think all of these things are helping us in terms of inclusion. A good example is how AI-powered in-room camera technology is also helping people to feel a lot closer to the people they're talking to. So you can have a vision where everybody's around a table and I'm talking to you across the table, right? And that's going to become more and more common. So everyone really feels part of that conversation, regardless of where they're sitting physically. So yeah, I think all of that is fantastic, but in the end of the day, the cultural piece needs to come with it, as we know. And it can't just be about technology. It needs to be how we're all really prioritizing inclusion and actually allyship as well. I always believe nobody gets up in the morning and doesn't want to do a good job. Everybody comes into work every day, tries to give their best. And the more that we can create the environment where they can do that, the better. And that might be also just our own awareness, making sure that if you're having a hallway conversation, if you happen to be in a physical location and you're sharing something, maybe that's something that you can put into a Teams chat with the team so everybody can actually know what's going on. So I think more and more communicating clearly, leveraging the technology we have, but also really trying to create those safe spaces are going to help us with the diversity and the inclusion efforts.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely, I would say, probably the fundamental thing that we're trying to focus on. And I think none of us get it right, and we're all having to improve. But I love, again, some of the things that Fiona, you guys are bringing out, things like VIVA Engage that allow those communities, those passionate people, those allies, those leaders to be able to get their stories and messages out to everyone. I think as well, you say there around all the technology. And I think it's really interesting because that technology is there, but it's another example of kind of the doing more with less. We could all be, it's there, it's inbuilt, we could be using it this afternoon. But equally, it requires kind of that change, that adoption, that understanding, and equally understanding how to use it. Talk there around meetings and kind of that whole hybrid work dimension, Chris, is probably the biggest shift that any of us have gone through in our lifetime. Like, it's going to go on for years. Have we trained, or have we even trained people yet to think about how do you make a meeting inclusive? Yeah. And the technology is great at kind of helping go one step towards that. But if you don't know the technology's there, you don't know how to use it, equally, you've not got that mindset and that skill, it's going to be something that I think we're going to be focused on for kind of a number of years to come.
Yeah. And it's interesting as well, because I think what I've seen is that some people find it a lot harder to develop relationships virtually than they may do in person. And so for many people, it's required kind of a pivot of style somewhat to actually be able to be successful in this world of virtual, particularly over the pandemic when everybody was really forced into that. And you can see with some people, they just crave that physical connection and the connection back with people in the office. And, one of the things that we also found out was that actually 85% of people are motivated to get back in to strengthen those team bonds, to be with their peers, to be with their colleagues. And so I think, also linked to the inclusion, we've got to be very aware of how people like to communicate and how they can be at their best. And sometimes it's with technology, sometimes it's not. And I just think getting that basic understanding between people and teams is going to be really important as well.
And you mentioned something there, Fiona, that again, I know there've been a few kind of blog posts by some of your, and dare I use the word metaverse, but what you guys are starting to think about in terms of mesh, in terms of creating those virtual environments that go beyond just the Teams call, that actually would allow me to be in a physical location and someone on a video call to be in that same location. I think, again, we're a number of years off that yet, but I think that is the next transformational shift. I think if I got £1 for every time I heard the word VIVA and the pound every time I heard the word metaverse, I'd be a very rich man. But I think these two worlds at some stage will kind of combine, and you'll start to think of the metaverse as a way of transforming employee experience, the ways of creating more diverse environment, the way of, dare I say it, not having to sit with my camera on in every Teams meeting, but at least allowing some interactivity from an avatar. I think some of the stuff there that you guys are starting to talk about will be transformational in a few years from a DE&I perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. It's all to come, right? It's already being used in many scenarios now, but I think it's really going to help there as well, for sure.
We're just going to take a second to thank our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Microsoft. Today's work environment requires new tools for your organization to thrive. Employee experience platforms such as Microsoft VIVA help people and teams reach their potential with communications, knowledge, learning, resources, and insights. By bringing all of this together in the flow of work, VIVA helps foster a culture that empowers employees and their teams to be their best and accelerate any organizational performance and results. Click the link below now to download your free ebook and learn the secret to delivering great employee experience and how to quantify the benefits in your own organization. Let's jump back in. I do want to touch on the point you made there a minute ago, Fiona, about why people come back into the office, because this has been a big struggle for so many companies about how do we get people back in the office. And many people have done it really badly. You come in, you open your laptop, you're like, wait a minute, I'm just doing the same thing here that I was doing at home. Why have I just commuted 1 hour? Yeah, to come and do this. And one of the insights from the report was people come in for each other.
Yeah.
And now, for example, in my own company, every Monday, my team comes in, laptops are away. It's purely us collaborating together, being creative, challenging each other, and just having a really collaborative environment. And I think that's something that came out of the report that really, it shouldn't have shocked people, to be honest. But I feel like some companies are like, oh, really? This is why people come? Yes, that's why people come in, because they want to see each other. They want to collaborate. We are human beings after all.
Absolutely. And look, as amazing as technology is, I think sometimes it's just the conversation catch up at the coffee line, or, that really helps people. So yeah, look, I think a couple of comments on that. Yes, people are motivated to come back in and see each other. That is for sure. And so that is going to be one thing beyond the policy that any company might put out there to say you need to be in 3 days a week or 4. There is a genuine need that people are saying that they would like to come in and meet each other. And so making space for that is going to be important. The coffee sessions, the time to be able to reconnect. And I think the other big area that's become apparent is that, we talk about it as re-recruiting your employees. So there's many people who may be with companies for a long time, but we can't be lax, right? People need to be re-recruited all the time because, as you said, Richard, we're on our 4th generation of war for talent, our 5th or 6th. It's there all the time. And you really need to understand what does that need mean to be re-recruited? What do people need? And a big part of that is actually the environment that they have available to them to spend time on learning, on development, on being coached, on helping them with their career progression, on giving them a diverse set of experiences, not necessarily always up, but it can be a playground of experiences. All of these things are important for people as they think about where they want to spend their time and coming back to the office. One of the things that we tried to do at Microsoft was really to define a kind of a higher bar that went beyond just the engagement, right? So beyond just people coming back to engage with each other. So a little bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which many of you may know, this breaks down the employee fulfillment, so to speak, into 5 key components. So 5 Ps: pay, which we all know is important, the perks that people have based on their work life, people, so that engagement piece and being connected, pride, so people feeling a real pride in what they do, which is also linked to the last one, which is purpose. So people getting up in the morning thinking, I'm going to do something good today, I'm going to enjoy it, I'm going to be proud of it, and I feel like there's a purpose to the work. So really being able to, when you ask so what all of those many times, that the end result is something that they can be proud and feel like there's purpose in. So that's something that we've been trying to integrate into everything, including people coming back to work.
Yeah, you see, again, it's so similar, Fiona. We talk, Chris, about kind of having to earn the commute. Like that you've got to earn the commute. None of us want to commute if you don't have to. And then, like you were saying, like, how do you, when you're in the office, how do you make sure you're in on the same day that all of your colleagues are in? Microsoft has just announced some fantastic new innovations kind of in that whole physical workspace, because kind of we've focused a lot in the past on like the digital workspace, especially over the last few years. Well, hybrid is a combination of the two. It's not only digital, but it's also the physical. How do I make sure if I'm going to go into the office, my team are in the office on that day? When I'm in the office, how do I know where everybody's going to sit so I can sit next to those people that I'm collaborating with digitally? Because the last thing I want to be is in a separate part of the building and not have those water cooler, those coffee moments. How do I even know who else is in the office that maybe I've connected with digitally, but I want to actually meet and have a physical chat with them over a coffee? Where are they in the building? That whole wayfinding bit. I mean, I love that Microsoft is kind of trying to, again, join up these 2 different workplaces and even thinking things through, that whole equitable meeting. How do I have that technology in that meeting room that, Fiona, like you said, that allows me to see everyone, allows everyone to get engaged, allows everyone to partake in kind of whiteboarding activities, as opposed to sat there on the phone while everybody's playing with Post-its in the room. Again, it's another great example, whether it's Teams rooms, whether it's whiteboarding, whether it's some of the room booking things, it's all there today. It's just, again, people need to be trained, people need to know it's there, people need to actively, I guess, from a HR leadership standpoint, kind of bring it all together and make it seamlessly for people to use and ultimately train people how to use it. How do I even book the right type of meeting room for the type of meeting that I'm trying to have? It all sounds boring stuff, but actually that's what has an impact on my experience. That's what has an impact on my engagement. Imagine going into the office, sat in a meeting room because everybody else is all at home dialing into that meeting. That's not an experience you want to have.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. These are the basics that we've got to be thinking about. And I think, you know, I always go back to what are the small steps that we can make. Yes, it's clear that people come in for each other. That's one of the primary things in terms of going back to the office. But even actually creating space, having a few coffee sessions, hybrid, whatever works, and having a space where people can just chat about what's on their mind, you know, what's top of mind. I think in this world, we're so constantly agenda, where are we going? What are we doing? And I think, you know, even having a conversation, what's on people's mind about coming back? You know, tell us, right? I think we were great at doing those kind of things at the beginning of the pandemic because we went into full force action of how do we keep people connected. I think we have to continue that even now beyond the pandemic and into this new way of work and into this hybrid world. We've got to keep those connections.
And HR, and you've heard me say this in the past, Chris, I think now's the opportunity for HR to step up. if HR really wants to own employee experience, and let's be honest, employee experience is more than just those HR processes.
Of course.
If I see another article written that is employee experience equals HR processes, I think I'm going to scream. But it's a great opportunity for HR leaders, for CHROs to connect with their corporate real estate, to connect with IT, to start to drive employee experience that is more than just HR, that deals with some of these hybrid work issues, that deals with, again, it doesn't sound glamorous, but that space change, that space optimization that needs to take place in the office, because to Fiona's point, probably going to need less desks and we're going to need more collaboration and more coffee meeting places. Someone has to drive that agenda. Someone has to go, well, actually, employee experience is the responsibility of everyone within an organization. How can HR kind of act as the, dare I use the word governance, but the enabler, that gets the rest of the organization to start to think with that same mindset as well?
It's a really exciting time that we're in right now. And I did a couple of panels recently with a number of global EX executives, and the most successful ones, or the ones that were having the most success, actually didn't even sit in HR. They sat outside of HR and actually had the responsibility for IT, for real estate, for all of those areas that you mentioned, for operations. Oh, lo and behold, they're having huge impact in the organization, because it's not a HR issue, it's a business.
I think it's the biggest threat to HR, Chris. I've said this for a while, which is if they don't step up and fill that void, the IT function, the other functions will do. And you're starting to see in those progressive organizations, like you say, EX not be the responsibility of the HR function, but a separate function. And hey, maybe that's the operating model that we need. But I would hope as an ex-CHRO that HR can step up and fill that. It's probably, if that's happening, that's probably a reflection of where HR is, as opposed to And
look, sometimes it's not black and white. I think this is about partnership, but I think in the end of the day, and if I was to highlight one community within any organization that really has the power to make this successful, it's the manager community. It is the people who are on the ground with their teams of 6 to 10 people, or the number of people who really can have that influence. So I would look on HR as the most critical business partners to ensuring the success of employee engagement and health and well-being and all of the things we've talked about, DE&I and collaboration. But equally, they need to be hand in hand with the people on the ground and the managers across any organization. So I think, whatever we can be doing around bringing that manager community with us, that will get that ripple impact. We want them to be the champions. We want them to be the leaders of implementing this, and leverage HR as amazing business partners and consultants in helping us to get there. So I think that's how I've seen it be most successful, and it's working really well.
I think that kind of brings us nicely full circle, Fiona. I think you couldn't have summed it up any nicer, in that if I look at what VIVA's doing, it's enabling managers. If I just think my own experience this morning, I was able to have a coaching conversation with a colleague over Teams, and literally within that Teams chat, recommend some learning courses within the actual meeting. So not just go, oh, I suggest you go to a learning management system, and 20 button clicks later, they might have found that right 3-minute video. I was actually able to do that within the flow of work. I was actually able to capture some of the sales things within the sales meeting a moment ago that made my experience as an employee better. That's what I love, is that it is taking it out of it solely being HR's responsibility, and empowering kind of employees and managers to be able to do some of that stuff without me having to go to the L&D function and go, please assign this course to person X.
Yeah. And, it's a good one maybe for us to wrap up on this concept just of learning, because again, linked to, engagement, linked to why people stay at organizations, what motivates people to stay. We found in some of the research that nearly half of employees say they feel like neither their immediate manager or their senior leadership prioritize learning and development. And so that's an issue when you've got people who really, really care about learning and development and who are trying to consistently move the bar higher on their skills and their capabilities as the needs of the workforce changes. 76% of employees said that they'd actually stay at their company longer if they can benefit from more learning and development support. So, there it is. I think, how can we get access to learning for more people? How can we make sure that they're pointed in the right direction, linked to their ambition, linked to their, not only the role they're in now, but maybe where they're looking to go next, and how we can ensure that people are getting access to things maybe even beyond their day-to-day, right? That they can get interested in. And, I know personally things like sustainability, which has become such a crucial topic for us, things about diversity and inclusion, right? How do I think about creating safe spaces? So whether it's soft skills, whether it's hard skills, I think being able to access that, exactly to your point, Richard, in the flow of work, you grab a half an hour here, you grab an hour there. And as well as we've really tried to make a focused effort on learning days in Microsoft. So once every 6 or 8 weeks, we will have a learning day, which is dedicated. And we are really trying to keep that a meeting-free zone and role modeling it, right? So not setting up meetings. There's always going to be, potential things that get in that way, but generally really trying to keep them free, really trying to make sure that people feel that that time is protected and that they can spend some quality time on learning. So I think, again, hoping to be able to leverage technology to support having the method, but also then us as leaders creating that space will be critical to help people stay longer.
Yeah, I was always frustrated as a chief learning officer. Why more people, when we spent millions on learning management systems and learning content, why people never accessed it? And it was because it was really hard to find. It was probably spread across multiple different systems. I had to go somewhere to an intranet and then remember which system had the right thing. I think, again, Fiona, some of the stuff you guys are doing there is what is needed. It's bringing it together. It's bringing it into the flow of work. It's allowing us to share that brilliant piece of content that we saw directly in that chat meeting, or being able to automatically carve out time in my meeting to do that learning. So in my day to do that learning, that just feels like technology is empowering me and making my life better as an employee, which is, let's be honest, if we're talking EXPs and employee experience platforms, what the technology should be doing. Help me be the best I can be. And
one very small thing, and it's a small function, but it's super helpful. We have this functionality in VIVA. It's called Answers, and so it's like a chat-like experience. So it's using AI and it's matching a question that might be coming from somebody to experts across the org. So you've got many people in organizations, and you never know who to go to find out exactly what you're looking for. So these types of interactions and smaller functionalities can really help bring access of so much talent and knowledge and capability when you need it to people, and especially in a world where you're onboarding a lot of new people and people are trying to get up to speed with different lenses. That can be really helpful.
Does that mean I won't be asked the same question 10 times each day?
I don't know if I can promise you that, Richard, but we're trying.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it with VIVA topics. Think of all of that information that's scattered across, again, a bit like learning management systems, scattered across all of those different knowledge systems. You just want to be able to access it in one place and see everything curated by experts. Again, talk about transformational for a professional services company, that whole knowledge piece. Chris, we could do a whole podcast just on that.
I know. I was thinking as well while you're talking, Fiona, you're an example of this, though, right? Would I be right in saying that one of the reasons that you stayed at Microsoft so long is that you've always been challenged, grown, developed, the constant learning? When I looked at where you started in your career to where you are now, completely different roles at all. Could you contribute that to the reason you've been engaged and stayed at Microsoft so long?
100%. I never ever thought I would be here or, here or in any company. When the 10-year mark came, I thought, oh my God, I can't believe it. But it's exactly for that reason, constantly being challenged, constantly being given the opportunity to do something new and different and build on your skills. And actually people taking a bet on you, even if it's in a totally different part of the organization. And that's one of the things I think people really, really value. Everybody wants to get a different set of experiences in their career. Life is just too short. Yep. So, working somewhere that can give you access to that is it's definitely been something for me. But that in itself is, another.
Well, last question before I let you go then. What would be your parting piece of advice for the audience, and where can the audience connect with both of you if they want to reach out and say hello? Richard, you jump in first.
Yeah, right. So just grab me on LinkedIn. As most people know, I'm always up for a chat and a good chin wag, whether over a coffee or a virtual coffee. What was your first question, Chris?
Parting piece of advice.
Just, I think Fiona said it earlier. Look, this is going to take a partnership across the organization. Just go and have some conversations with some of the other functions that you maybe just don't talk to, whether it's real estate and find out what they're doing, whether it's IT, go and find that digital workplace board who looks after kind of Microsoft and understand how they can help you and how you can help them. I do come back to there's a whole bunch of untapped potential there that doesn't require additional license fees or any of that. It's just sweating the assets that you've already got. Even thinking about all of those brilliant Teams apps, think about how you could bring in Workday or ServiceNow into Teams to just make those incremental steps better. What did I get from VIVA Connections earlier on this week? I got a little personalized note saying congratulations when I logged in on my 3-year anniversary here at Avanade. It's those little micro moments that make an impact, but it's going to take kind of a team and a family to transform this. So just go and offer someone a coffee and go and chat with a different function that you don't normally connect with. And as usual, Chris, thanks for having me. Fiona, keen to hear what you think.
Yeah, I mean, look, given we've spent a lot of time today talking about trends and engagement, etc., I think probably 3 things that I would leave the audience with. One is try and help end the productivity paranoia. So really let's stretch ourselves to trust our teams and to focus on impact and on smart work versus extra hours. I think the second thing is embrace the fact that people actually want to come in for each other. That's a good thing. We know people want to see each other. So how can we make the very best of that and create the most healthy hybrid environments and give people that opportunity? And then the last thing I think is really focus in on re-recruiting your employees. So how do we use learning? How do we use coaching? How do we use our technology to help give people what we know they're going to stay for, which is most important to them? And if there was one piece of functionality that I would say has really, that I have found really useful within VIVA to use myself, there's a little thing called praise that you can give people. And it's such a simple concept. It's a little ping to say, well done today. Thanks for taking the leadership. Thanks for being optimistic. Thanks for having a growth mindset. Thanks for helping. It's a small thing. And I think they are the kind of messages, like your point, Richard, that you got, that really help people every day to just feel good about what they're doing and to feel recognized. And I will end on that note because I think that's probably one of the most important things everybody across every organization is to feel recognized and that they're contributing. So thank you so much for having us, Chris, and lovely to talk with you as well.
No worries. And I'm assuming we can find you on LinkedIn, Fiona.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, of course. So Fiona Carney, LinkedIn, Microsoft. Yeah, you should be able to find me there.
Amazing. And for everyone who's already going to put this in the chat, all of the links that and all of the reports that we've spoken about, they're all in the description. So whether you're listening or watching, wherever you are, if you click the link in the description, I'll make sure I include everything. So I know you're already going to message me about that, everyone listening as well. But thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I love what you're doing. Every time I speak to Richard or someone in the team, Fiona, there's always something new that I'm learning about VIVA and what you're doing, and that we're super excited to share with our global community of HR leaders as well. But wish you all the best until next week, and keep up the amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Thanks for having us, Chris.